I think that gives us a nice segue actually to move on to the Ange Postecoglou issue and talk about how much pressure he is under at the moment, because I think he's going to probably live and die by two particular things, whether it be the recruitment that comes into the club and also the tactics that he does deploy. And, you know, he needs to be getting the best out of the likes of Son Heung-min, who's obviously the best player at the football club, the captain, the guy who's got that X factor. And having him out wide where he is just wasting him, completely wasting him right now, where you could get a doggy to cover those wide areas and get him cutting in a little bit more, where you know whether he cuts in, where if you get him into that little area, he can ping the ball in from 30 yards, he can ping the ball in for 25 yards, or we can relieve ourselves our pressure and get that goal. Dave, do you feel like Ange Postecoglou is really under enormous amounts of pressure now? Do you feel like if the results keep carrying on over the next 2 or 3 games, Daniel Levy could wield that famous axe of his?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Sorry, it's the Irish internet. It's going absolutely madness today. When it comes to Ange Postecoglou, look, I'm a big fan of Ange Postecoglou, but I'm also not naive to know that it's a results-driven industry. It's a results-driven sports, and you live and die by the results at the end of the day. And the guy needs to start picking up results very, very, very quickly here at Tottenham Hotspur. I think a loss to Coventry, I think, could really sort of spell the end. When you see Fabrizio Romano coming out with the tweet he did yesterday, that's sort of like the old vote of confidence that used to come out, and not so long after the managers end up used to carrying the can. But when it comes to,
it's just about when he's just about to get into it, he stops.
It gets us in.
Sorry, Dave, you're breaking up again, but you're back. You're back with us. You're back with us.
Yeah.
I'll go to Sim and then I'll come back to you.
Oh, so I was going to say, in large,
go on.
Yeah.
Go on, Dave. Oh, he's gone. Go on, Sim.
Oh, my internet's gone.
Oh, yeah. You know, when it comes to what's going on with Ange at the moment, and the reality is, the results are extremely bad at the moment. You know, I think it's 7 defeats in the last 11 games. I think it's 5 wins in the past 15 games. The only wins in that time, especially in the past 11 games, have been against teams.
Burnley, Sheffield United.
Two of them aren't in the league at the moment. Burnley, Sheffield United, and Everton have lost every game this season. These are the only games that we've won in the past 11 games. Some of the defeats have been atrocious, 4-0 away at Newcastle. We've been battered away at Chelsea. We've lost to Arsenal at home twice. We got battered at Anfield 4-2. So we've had taken some really heavy beatings in that time as well. And we seem to really struggle against teams who are like top half teams who we're supposed to be better than, we're supposed to be competing with. We seem to really struggle to get results against these teams. We seem to really struggle we basically lose the game in both boxes. We're too open and we're not clinical enough in the final third. And these are traits that are very, very worrying. Now, it's only 4 games. If you're taking this season in isolation, I reckon he's still got some time. It's early on. I don't think we actually played badly to an effect this season.
November is approaching, my friend.
Yeah, I know, but I think this season in isolation, I don't think there's a massive problem. It's when you take the bigger picture into effect, and you take into how we ended last season, and you add that to how we've started this season, then Ange's got to be a bit worried. He's definitely got to turn things around soon, because we know what Levy's like. If we go on a really bad, I mean, we're already on a bad run, but if this run continues going into like November time, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts sounding out other managers, because not that I agree with him, but I think the results are just nowhere near good enough for what we're trying to achieve. I know it's a process and all this kind of stuff, and we need to give it time, and I agree with all of that. But at the end of the day, I know what this board expect. They want us back in the Champions League. They want us getting back into top 4. And if it's looking like come November time that we're already going to be nearly out the race, then they will think twice about giving Ange this project. Coupled with the fact that Ange, throughout his career, he's won wherever he's been, but he's never been a manager who's stuck around for more than 2-3 years at a team. So I don't see him as this I don't know if there's any evidence yet of him being this long-term guy who's going to be here 5 years. And look, I'd love that to be the case, but I'm not sold on the fact yet that he definitely is that kind of manager who's going to be at Spurs for 4 or 5 years and a real.
The only reason
project.
he's ever left clubs is because he's achieved his targets and he's achieved his goals, and then he leaves once he achieves his goals.
Correct, but that's still.
Well, he leaves for a better job. You mean though, right? We know he gets.
He does leave for a better job, but he always does achieve his targets, doesn't he?
Yeah, but there's still no evidence. There's still no evidence of him being a long-term project manager. By the by, regardless of it's because he's won everything and then just leaves because he's achieved everything he has to in a short space of time. But it still doesn't show me evidence that he's definitely a long-term project. I do think if this kind of run, if we're sitting here in November and the run, and I don't know how many games we've got now between now and November, but in the Premier League, let's say we've got another 7 games or something, or 8 games. If we lose like 5 of them, I think he could definitely be in trouble. He can definitely be in trouble for his job. And I think the fans will lose patience. I think a lot of people will start to turn on him, and I think the board will as well. Not to say necessarily, I believe, depending on the context of how these games go, that it would be the right decision to sack him. I'm more than happy to give him time and allow this project to kind of flesh out and give it air to breathe and allow it to. Allow us to persist with it and give him time to figure out these issues. But I just know what this board are like, and if we're looking like we're not going to get top 4, they will go in another direction. And from that point of view, he's definitely under pressure to turn this run around very, very quickly, and we need to start getting results and consistent results very, very soon. Otherwise, people are going to start to question him, and I think that's already starting.
You're looking at the next 7 games in the Premier League, right? Brentford at home, Man United away, Brighton away, West Ham at home, Palace away, Villa at home, Ipswich at home, and Man City away, right? Mm-hmm. Since Ange has joined,
all losable.
Yeah. Exactly, all winnable or losable. But the reality is, Max, the reality is, since Ange Postecoglou has come to this club, I think we've only beaten 5 teams in the top 10. That is a ridiculous number. That is a ridiculous number.
And that was in the early part, right?
Liverpool was lucky. Man United was the second game.
This is about being figured out, right? If you were going to do a review, right, of Ange to see where we're at and where we're going, where you can do this. Positives, we're facing the pitch. We spent 3 years facing the other way, behind the sofa, watching going out. It was unwatchable. So we've got us facing there when we are being entertained. It's taken us to a point where we've got unbelievable levels of frustration. But I'll tell you why we've got the levels of frustration, and this is where I started about being a slave to philosophy. He's not that far off. The tweaks are not that complex. It's not like we don't have the players to do certain things. It's not like we completely have to change even. It's not even formation, right? Like we had under Conte, which was just a formation that was never going to work for us long term because we didn't have the players that match that formation. It's not that, right? It is literally the fact that we're frustrated that we know it's just there. It's just a few minor tweaks. I know we spoke about fullbacks. I know we spoke a little bit about, maybe the holding roles and whether it's 1s and 2s. We know there's a little bit around set pieces, which is a kind of, again, it's not a fundamental thing. It's a minor tweak. It's a minor tweak. And our frustration that if he's a good guy, good manager, speaks the right language, the players I do think like him, respect him and are into him. The media love him. I think we can go somewhere with him. I do think he is a winner. Absolutely, in his mentality, probably more than most that we've had in his attitude towards winning. But if he doesn't have any flexibility to change those couple of little things, we will just be just there without doing it. And that's how we feel when we're watching a game. We watched us playing Arsenal, dominating a game and not scoring. We watched us playing Newcastle, dominating a game and not scoring. We watched us make a hatful of chances against Leicester, and we only scored 1, and we ended up paying the price. This is where we're at. Ange can, unlike some of the others, Ange can save himself. Ange can save himself. Whether he's just loses the stubbornness on his few little things, and it turns all of those matches that were draws and defeats that we've had in that last 15, 20 games into victories. All of them. Because all of the goals were conceded with the same 2 things. They're not because we've been outplayed. They're not because we're not good enough. They're not because we're getting battered. They are because there's just repeat. Every opposition manager's got us sussed. Absolutely.
Max, if we do go, carry on this bad form over the next 7 games, what would you like to see happen? Would you like to see, Daniel Levy take some action, or do you still want to persist with Ange and in hope that he can change those things?
Look, I'm a big believer in be careful what you wish for, right? So you get rid of someone or something, and then you end up with something that's actually no better,
and you end up with a Nuno Espirito Santo.
And the methodology of recruitment and everything else is. I put managers in 2 categories. Okay, a build it manager and a buy it manager. So the problem that we had with Mourinho and that we had with Conte is that they were buy it managers anywhere that they have succeeded, but that's because they had the biggest budget in the league and they could buy anyone they want for anywhere they want. And I'm not being funny, but most managers, given what they were given, would probably do quite well and probably win. Not win maybe as much, and maybe they have other things, but you know what I'm saying to you. Pochettino was a bit of a build it manager. He came unstuck for being a slave for philosophy as well. And it started when we went to Wembley because that philosophy didn't work anymore. Right, the pitch was a bit bigger. Our 2 centre backs, who are amazing, the Rolls Royce and Bentley of Toby and Vertonghen, were 2-3 years older. We couldn't play a high line anymore. We lost Rose and Walker. Couldn't have that thing, and then he didn't know how to change it. So then we looked really, really poor at the end at Wembley. We somehow got to Champions League final, but in the league we were pretty terrible for the rest of that season, and it was worse, in the new season. And ended up costing his job. So, but he was a build it manager. Ange, I think, is a build it manager. So I'm not in favour of getting rid of him. I'd much rather. We all have this dream as football fans. I'd love to bump into him to the street and he's just say, "Mate, can we have a chat for a cup of coffee, mate?" And just have a chat. These 2 little things, 3 little things. We all have that dream as football fans. He's that close. Our team is that close. We can go to the next window and buy 1 player. Yeah, 1. And that could put us right there, or 2, right? It could, because the other stuff we have the players for. That's my belief. Keep him. It's not backing with money. It's just backing with a little bit of, I don't know, maybe methodology. I think that's what we're missing. I don't know if you guys have the stats, but how many of the goals that we conceded over the last 40 goals are counters, and how many are set pieces?
We conceded 18 from set pieces since his arrival.
18 directly from set pieces. Yeah. So are we being exploited, or is everyone else really, really smart? Or are we just doing something repeatedly wrong? Right. And again, comes back to Ange, right? He should be able to see it over these and play these things back and see what we see, because it's kind of a weird thing. We're fans. We see exactly the same thing. What do we see? We see 2 things. Just use corners as an example. Once the ball is in the air, it stops being about marking. You mark, you take position, you cajole, you set up, you do all of that until the ball is in the air. And once the ball is in the air, there's a transition where you go from marking to attacking the ball. And we don't, our transition to attacking the ball doesn't happen. Romero is a perfect one for that. He's so busy pulling around and marking his guy and trying to get in front. The ball's in the air and he's still looking at his guy, and instead of actually turning focus to the ball and attacking that. So we just do that over and over and over again. That's one issue that we have. It's a minor tweak. You could do it in a meeting. You don't even have to do it in a training field. You just say, guys, when the ball crosses a certain position, this is when we start turning our focus towards the ball. If it's coming in your area, you attack the ball, or you 3 players are designated for attack.
But they have tweaked it, though. They've gone half man mark, half zone.
The half is fine, but they don't switch to attacking the ball. They're still marking.
That's on the players, though. There's nothing that you could bring in a specialist tomorrow. He can set them up. But, it's on the players to go and have that hunger, that desire, and that, proudness to be able to protect the box and try and keep a clean sheet to go and header that. There's nothing Ange Postecoglou can do. No, he can't. The player has to make that decision. Ange Postecoglou, like you said in the team meeting, can sit there, highlight it all he wants. But it's up to the players to want to go and do that.
As you saw with Romero against Gabriel, I mean, that wasn't a tactical issue. That was a completely on the player.
And there's no excuses for it. He can go up the other end. Look how competitive he's up the other end for us from set pieces. There's no excuse for it down the other end. It's
starting positions, right? These things are impacted by starting positions. That ability to go and, like say, have that is your starting position is a problem. If you look at what Arsenal did, Arsenal did us on the corners, and I was watching it going, I've been praying for us to do this for a long time, and that is approach from the back of the box. Come round from the further away from the corner taker. If he overhits, you've got someone there. He can hit it with more confidence and pace, because sometimes you do overhit that, but you know there's someone there. And your trajectory and your elevation comes from the fact you're running in towards the goal. We throw everyone, including our big guys, at the front of the thing, and we had Son at the back who can't do anything, right? Arsenal did the opposite. They threw everyone to the back of the box. They started at the back, and everyone comes running forward at us at 4 different directions. Sorry, I know what you're saying, Dave, about desire, but our setup prior to the ball being in the air is already wrong.
But this is my big concern. Any manager we've had at this football club, the fans tell them they're wrong. And what I mean by that is Jose Mourinho, he was outdated, didn't know how to do modern day football. Went and won a Europa Conference League with Roma. You know, the one we got absolutely embarrassed in. You know, and many Spurs fans were killed for that. Conte, we said, okay, he got himself sacked, but a lot of fans were saying outdated, don't like the tactics, blah, 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 blah. He's sitting top with Serie A with Napoli right now. Ange Postecoglou, before he arrived to Tottenham, maybe not at the same level as other managers, but he has won games. And I'm starting to get a bit concerned at Tottenham Hotspur that any manager we bring in the door, we argue to the contrary of what he's trying to do rather than actually try and see it and get behind it a little bit. We had Conte. We told him he needs to be more attacking. He needs to switch from a back 3 to a back 4. We've got Postecoglou now. I'm hearing people say switch from a back 4 to a back 3. He needs to be more defensive. We can't keep doing this to every single manager that walks in the door. At some point, you have to try and embrace what the guy's trying to do and get behind it. You can't keep telling them they're wrong. And in reality, at this football club, we've changed squad. We've changed managers. We've changed coaching staff. The one thing we haven't changed is the ownership. That's the only thing that hasn't changed at this football club. We've changed absolutely everything else over the last couple of years. And we find ourselves sitting here in the same dilemma again. Do you stick with the manager? Do you sack him? The manager's absolutely clueless and everything else. I'm sorry, but not every manager that walks in this door since Pochettino has been clueless. I'd argue every manager that's walked in this door has more or less been failed by what the club have failed to do for them in the transfer market. And that's when he has to try and make solutions with what he's already got, which what doesn't work, then all of a sudden fans come in and start questioning him, saying he doesn't know what he's doing, this, that, and the other. And I think it's absolutely wrong. Look, don't get me wrong. I think Postecoglou is a man under severe pressure right now. Severe pressure to start delivering results. It's not just off the base of what we've seen at the start of this season. It's from October last season. And I'm a big fan of Ange Postecoglou. I think his tactics works to a large degree. Gets us in the final third. Camps us in there. Even if teams don't want to sit back against us, we force them to sit back. But it's the same problem as last year. Is that forward area. We do not turn that dominance into goals, which bring points, which brings belief into the system and stuff like that. And again, I go back to the summer. I don't think we've done enough to really address that problem, to really help this guy. And now all of a sudden, 5 games in, the same issues are rearing their head. And people are going, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's clueless. He's stubborn. He won't change. I'm sorry, but I heard it all under Conte. I heard it all under Jose Mourinho. I'm absolutely fed up with it. At some point, you've got to back a manager. And I think with Postecoglou, and I'm not getting into a Harry Kane debate here, but in order to recognise the problem and to be able to solve it, we have to highlight it. Yeah, we ended up selling Harry Kane. It's created a huge issue for us going forward now in terms of goals and someone assisting. And not only that, and I tried to highlight this on a panel show here with you guys before last season, how crucial Kane and Son's link-up-ship, the partnership they had was. And you can tell Son is missing someone like Kane who understands his game, you know, can take the ball in and do other things, so leaves him free to make them runs that he used to make under Harry Kane, because he didn't always have to be the one getting on the ball and creating. And this is where I think Postecoglou deserves a little bit of time. I think he deserves a little bit of time to try and get that forward line right, because that's our biggest issue. If we take our opportunities, we take that spell of dominance and we start scoring goals, we're putting points on the board and we're not even having half of these conversations.
Dave,
I completely agree.
I don't think the fans have turned on Postecoglou yet.
I think you're starting to hear some people switch it. It's starting.
It's starting, and there's murmurings, and I get it. And again, some of that is because of the results that we had. But you can look at, you just explained something like perfectly about what our issue is, right? And you mentioned about the Kane and Son thing, which I find really interesting. So why are we not getting now the best out of Son, and we don't have Kane. Let me tell you, if Kane was still there right now under this system, he would have the same issue. And the reason is that because of having our overload means it's very easy for us to play through the lines because we have extra players and the fullbacks being in there. So we can play through the lines more than twice, actually, and get to the edge of the opposition's box very easily. That's why we're so dominant and we get out there. That's not good for Son. Son needs our play to happen just inside the opposition's half for you to turn the ball into him, to green grass and run onto. He's a master at that. He's one of the best ever at that. But unfortunately, he's not. We are so dominant by our way we play and by the way the opposition lets us play. We get right to the edge of the box. There is no green grass for Son. There'd be no space for Kane either, by the way. There'd be no space. It's you know, I don't even think this is a personnel thing. I still don't think this is a chairman thing either on this particular issue.
Yeah. What do we think about what Ange said after the game? You know, he was quite bullish in his interview. He was asked, you know, about winning things in the second season. He said, I don't usually win things. I always win things in my second season. And he was talking about some of the players maybe lacking a bit of conviction and belief in the way they play. I mean, listening to that...
This isn't the first time he said that, though.
No, it's not the first time he said that, but he's still saying it. Which is a problem, you know, the fact that it's still happening. I mean, that's even a problem in itself, that it's still lacking conviction and belief even now. First of all, when managers are going on their record like Ange is saying, is that a manager bullish with self-confidence in himself, or is that a manager leading on his record because he's feeling the pressure? Dave?
Yeah, I've two things on that. I think when you see Ange sort of getting tetchy, the way he corrected the reporter, again, it signals a man under pressure. I've seen it with Conte, with Jose, people like that when they start switching up on the reporters in the interviews and stuff like that. So that concerns me a little. The second thing is about the conviction and the buy-in with some of the players. Look, it's been a problem under Conte. It's been a problem under Jose. I do believe that's because they feel like they've got the power to be able to get the manager out at every opportunity rather than them actually sit there and take the blame and start focusing. And I think this is where maybe we need to switch it up and just say to this playing squad, you know, and this is where it also has to come from Daniel Levy. The manager ain't going nowhere. It's up to you to buy in and show a bit of conviction in what you're doing. We are sticking by our man. But when you have the hire and fire policy we've had since Pochettino, it allows players not to buy in fully to what a manager is asking them to do. And then I know a lot of people would say it's diluted from Ange Postecoglou. I actually find it refreshing that he's doubling it down and saying, oh, I will win something this season. And the reason why I say that is Conte and Jose constantly gave us reasons why we couldn't succeed, why we wouldn't get over the line. Rightly so, some fans would argue, pointing out things. But they are constantly, hampered the fans' expectations. Whereas Postecoglou is, giving the fans expectations. And I think it's actually refreshing for a change to hear that come from a manager.
Do you not think that... So I worry when managers do that, especially about players, that I'm not saying that it's deflection, but it's a little bit of like preparing the ground, right, for it not to be your fault, right? And certainly Conte did a bit of that, and actually Pochettino also did a little bit of that. It concerns me because, to my mind,
but if it's three managers all saying the same thing, is it not then?
Yeah,
not just always the manager.
But you can be clever with words to deflect from your own failings. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, but if three people are saying the same thing, you can't just
they all had like different reasons. Are these players not got the confidence and the conviction to do whatever he wants to do? Maybe, but let me tell you something about that. That's the manager's job. That is the manager's job.
And he did say that. And he said it's on me to fix. He said it's on me to fix. He did take responsibility.
I'm going to confess I didn't watch the interview. In fact, I went completely dark after that game. Didn't watch that.
Nobody's going to blame you for that, Max. No one's going to blame you.
Well, just to get you the quote, Max, he said, the players are the players are lacking conviction and belief in the way we play, and that's on me to fix. That's what he said.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that he recognised that. For me, that is what I do feel bad. He is a stand-up guy, right? And I think that's why we do like him. We do think he's a winner. That's why I'm not by any stretch calling for him. I just want him to. We all want him to do better, and I just think he's just not far off it. That's all. He's not far off it. I think if you look at these points that we've dropped, right? How much would you need to have tweaked to have won the Leicester game, won the Newcastle game, and won this Arsenal game? Not that much. And we said right at the top of the show, every time we played Arsenal over since I can remember myself, right? I always felt under pressure at some point in the game, right? That they're going to score, they're going to do. I never felt that in this game. I never felt that. Not for 1 minute. I think Arsenal are going to score in a minute. Did you remember ever feeling like that in this game?
The only bit was when Martinelli went 1-on-1, and that was about it.
Yeah, it happened twice. The first one was a Porro slip, right, that led to it a bit higher up the field. And another bit, maybe there was a little bit of communication, but it ended up being well covered, right? But that, and they were in the first 10 minutes, I think. But beyond that, I never sit there going, "Oh, they're going to score, they're going to score." Apart from when we had that mistake down the other end, that they got the corner from that counter attack, and I was like, I remember saying, "This feels like it's in." I've got a cousin of mine who's a big Spurs fan but lives in Israel, watches all the games, and he messages me every time the opposition has a corner with one word in Hebrew. And do you know what it says? Penalty. He messages the word penalty. He said, "Corners against us are like a penalty." Right? And he knows what he's talking about. He's a pro. He was an ex-pro himself, and he was like, "It's another penalty." It's incredible. So
it was a bit of a strange one after the game, because you got Ange in his interview blaming himself for the lack of conviction in the players. You've got Son coming out in his interview blaming the players for not following through completely. So everyone's kind of blaming themselves. I've never actually seen something like that before. And at the end of the day, at one point during this tenureship, we have to stick with the manager and see his vision through. Whether you think it's working right now or not, we need to see this vision through. And I think Arsenal, as much as I hate to say it, is a perfect example of it. You saw the first 3 years of Mikel Arteta, eight games lost in a row. They stuck through with this process through the thick and the thin. How many times did Pochettino say at the end of his tenure, this club needs a really hard, painful rebuild? And I feel like that is what we're going through at the moment. We didn't get that rebuild under Conte. We didn't get that rebuild under Mourinho. We didn't get that rebuild under Nuno. And I feel like we are going through that now. So surely at some point we're going to have to stick through this, through the thick and the thin. And I believe Postecoglou is the man that can take us through this rebuild if we stick with his principles and stick with his gun. Because at some times, I remember a lot of Arsenal fans and a lot of the rest of the Premier League were clowning on Arteta for his tactics, were clowning on Arteta for the way he sets up his teams. But look at them now. They've gone through the hard bits and they've come through at the other end, and they're seeing light at the end of the tunnel. And I feel like that's what we need to do.
But Ben, they were a crap show for quite a long time. And I'm saying to you, from our point of view, we're not a crap show. Right? We are actually quite close. And this was the opening thing that when we first started this conversation earlier, the first line of the fix for Spurs, we can write on a postcard. We can write it on a postcard, and it's one line: "Don't be a slave to a philosophy." If you're going to sit there and you get an opportunity to send a 10-word, whatever it is, text to Ange Postecoglou, it would be, "Don't be a slave to a philosophy." That's all.
You talk about slave to philosophy, Max, but Klopp was a slave to a philosophy. He played the same way week in, week out, no matter what. Took batterings
only at the end. Only at the end.
Even at the beginning, he was playing Lovren in that high line. They were getting battered quite a lot. We battered them, 4-0, 4-1 at Wembley. They took a lot of batterings early on. Pep Guardiola was the same. Only now, and since Haaland's come in, they've started to see different kind of ways that they can play the ball. But definitely at the beginning, to drum in that philosophy, he played the same way, week in, week out.
But he has the luxury, as I said, if you remember me saying, you want to be a slave to philosophy, you have to have the ability, the resources to buy the very, very best in every position and the cover. And that's what, Guardiola has the ability to do. By the way, so did Mourinho and so did Conte in wherever they've been. I'm just saying that we haven't quite got that resource, not quite that level. Don't forget also, Ange's philosophy has been successful fine, in Australia and in Celtic, but that's not the Premier League or La Liga or whatever. It is different. This is more competitive. Teams are way more efficient in being able to counter you. Forget how they play, and I just think that he's a little bit figured out. We feel a little bit figured out, right? And I just think that since we've been figured out, which is probably 20 games ago, he has tweaked nothing.
But Max, I want to take it back to your point about the resources. We do have the resources. We're spending 50 million on Brennan Johnson. We're spending big money. We've spent the second or third biggest net spend over the past 3 years in the Premier League. Like, we're spending it wrong, surely.
That's not it, Ben. Whenever people talk about transfers and they talk about spend and net spend, that's not the number. Okay, you can get the best player in the world on a free transfer if your resources are to pay exorbitant wages, right? So you need to merge the two. You need to take net spend plus wages in order to understand where people are at. If you look over the last 20 years and you look at the Premier League table, by and large, the table, more or less, with the odd anomaly, obviously, mirrored the wages table, not the spend table. Because next year we can spend 250 million and Man City can spend 50 because they've already got a great team. It's not about that, but the reality is that their overall and that cost, that wages thing is a critical thing that even Daniel Levy, and this is maybe for Dave, part about. I've certainly got issues with Daniel Levy on various things, but as far as the cost and the spend, you have to understand something. Purchasing a player is an asset. It has a value. It is the only thing that you do out there the only asset out there that as it gets better decreases with value. Doesn't happen in any other asset class, but with footballers it does because they have time decay on their contract. Okay, that's what we suffer with. You can buy a player at 22 that by the time he's 27, his value is going down whilst he's getting better because he's got 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, and going to go for free. That's already an anomaly. But the real liability is on the wages. Because once you give someone a contract for 3, 4, 5, 6, or as Chelsea are doing, 8 and 9 years, you then have to say, okay, we're going to pay them 10 million a year or more, 15 now, 300 grand a week, 15 million a year over an 8-year contract. Ridiculous, 120 million liability. And this is where Daniel Levy's problem is that he's keeping the club in a position that is a sellable asset. So as much as we are, the value of a football club.
You got stung too hard with Tanguy and Ndombele, that's why.
Yeah, but absolutely. But if you think about how you price it, it'll be the value of the brand and the commercial value that it is, right? And whatever multiplier effect you have on that, minus your liabilities. And your liabilities are not the assets of the value of the players, unless they've got 1 year left. It's the wages. And he knows that. If we go out and we have 10 players on 300 grand a week, that is whatever. I don't even know what on 8-year contracts. I don't know what that is. That's 1.5 billion worth of liability. Okay. That is going to completely reduce the value of the club if he ever wants to sell it. So he's stuck in that, I think, anyway, in that little bit. We cannot afford to not be in Champions League because we need that money. And it's a catch-22, and we're stuck in it. We're not the only ones stuck in it, but we are probably the most high-profile ones that are stuck in it. And that's when it comes to.
When it comes to the 400 million that you're talking about us spending, Ben, I think there also has to be a realization that we spent that across multiple positions because the amount of money we needed to spend on our squad. Other clubs are spending that on a couple of players here and there. They're a lot further down there. This is another team why I think we should be giving someone like Postecoglou a chance is because, you spoke about Arteta, you spoke about Jurgen Klopp, the two teams that have challenged Man City over the last couple of years or since Guardiola's been here. They were given time to build it, and it didn't all go well. It didn't all go right. They had tough periods where they were also sitting there questioning the manager, is this the right guy going forward and stuff like that. But the board stacked behind it, and over time they continue to give them the pieces of the puzzle. And I think this is where we're at with Tottenham. We can't continue this hire and fire policy of a manager nearly every 14 to 16 months and getting them out the door. we're going downwards. And you will never, ever get a full squad together by doing that, because every manager you bring in wants different things for different positions, and you'll always have a mix and match squad. Granted, this year I think we've got a competitive squad, but one thing we lack on the pitch and one thing we didn't buy in the window is a proper leader to come into this football club, to really knit it all together, to really bring all the biggest problems. But again, there's not really much of a fix Ange Postecoglou can do for that. That's someone that you have to bring in that has that in them. You can't make moment order or not. It's that simple. And I just think this is why we need to stick by Postecoglou and continue to give him the pieces of the puzzle so that eventually we can get there. We don't have a chairman that's going to sit there and fund it like Abramovich under every single different manager. When Chelsea had Abramovich, they could get rid of the manager because Abramovich knew, I've got every position stacked 3 times over with the best quality I can get in. At Tottenham Hotspur, we do not have that. We bring it in increments, and that's why it's even more important to get behind a manager and give him time to really build it, rather than this hire and fire policy. Because you look at Everton, they were once where we were when they had stability under David Moyes and that. Since then, and more so recent years, a lot of hire and fire policy, different managers have got them into financial mess and fighting the relegation zone. We will end up there if we continue this over the next, five or so years going forward. This is critical that we really give a manager a chance to get pieces of the puzzle. And I think that's where you start seeing the fruits.
Dave, I think we all think the same, though, in respect to that.
And the longevity of the club, I think it's the right thing. I don't know about that, though. I don't think so. Fans chase Jose Mourinho out of the club. They chase Conte out of the club. They chase Nuno out of the club. And Ange Postecoglou, Ange out is becoming louder and louder by the game, by the results. So I wouldn't sit there and say that everybody feels like that, because they don't.
Yeah, listen, that's why we said, I think I said the honeymoon period is over. And now really there is a period of time, getting serious to it. He's had another window, right? And now it's time to make it tick. I think we've got a lot of things that are very, very positive. I'm very positive about some of the young players that we have, both the ones that are coming through, like the Mikey Moores, etc., and maybe even that Lancashire might turn out to be something quite. I'm quite fascinated by him. We'll see. Certainly, Bergvall is no doubt a talent. Odenberg's a talent. Archie Gray, I'm very concerned about because I think we might ruin him, as opposed to be himself. I think we'll play him and one day right back, one day centre back, one day centre back. I think we need to actually decide on his position and make him own it. We'll see. I think all 4 of us are for backing Ange.
Backing Ange, 100%.
Backing Ange for now. And if we could all send a postcard, and we would all send the same postcard. Ange, don't be a slave to philosophy. Let's get it in his mailbox.
Do you firmly believe that he will be lasting the season, though? I'll put the question on all of you. Will he last this season?
Max?
Me? I think he will. I think a couple of things are going to help. I think the fact that we've got European competition is probably going to help. And I think the one thing that's going to help with is giving certain opportunities through other games, and including the League Cup, hopefully, which we don't bow out earlier again, to blood some of these very close to the first team players. And I think I'm hoping that we get a real discovery or two out of that. I think we'll get certain things that we will get the benefit of. And I'm going to link this back to the Newcastle game and Dragusan, right? So Dragusan is just not getting too much game time. And when you look at that goal that they scored and the goal that they scored, we look at Romero, people saying about Romero, but it's symptomatic of the fact that they just haven't played together. Because it was Romero stepping up, but the others weren't. You can say that he stepped up when he shouldn't, but actually they should have all been together, come what may, and they weren't. So was it him stepping up or was it the other stepping back? I don't know. Either way, it wasn't right. Yeah, so I think we need to give more game time to these guys, these players, and I think that will help Ange have the time till the end of the season. I still think we're good enough to win plenty of games, right? And actually to, funnily enough, beat some of the better teams who do come at us, because when they do come at us, it suits everyone, because then our fullbacks are a bit pegged, so they're not up there. Then Son has got green grass to play in front of. Johnson actually suddenly does all right in those games, right, when he's got the ball just inside the halfway line and he's got something to run onto. And I think that. Can I just say something really positive, by the way?
Please.
Yes. Go on. We all love a bit of positivity here.
I thought, and I know that usually it's about goal scoring, I thought that Solanke was absolutely fantastic. His play without the ball and hold up play. I mean, Saliba and Gabriel didn't get the ball off him, right? And if they did, it was a fight and a scrap. And I think that I was really, really impressed with his hold up and his bringing in and his physicality and his pressing from the front really much. I don't think we're close to getting the best out of him. My frustration is that the best out of him is crosses. Mm-hmm. We have to cross the ball. Like, there's so many opportunities. Crosses and better crosses. Really better crosses. Johnson needs to work on it. I'm not even sure that Johnson's the guy. I prefer Kulusevski out there. I think Odegaard is very interesting. And I'd love Porro to be crossing the ball from a slightly better position, not so deep. Let him get to the byline if he's on the wide. I think that's where Solanke can really make us better than last year, basically.
Yeah. Anyone think that Ange isn't going to last the season?
No, I think he will. I think Max makes some good points about, I think the European, if we can go a deep run in Europe, hopefully that'll help him. Obviously, if we're like 10th in the league, I don't think he would get her to see out a European run. But I do think our squad's good enough to keep us competitive into the top 5, top 4. I do. And I do think the European run will help us bed in other players and give them game time to get used to the system and stuff like that. And I do think these promising youngsters, that if they get some game time there, and then they can make an impact in the Premier League, I think that will help us. I know it's early days in the Premier League. I know we're all, a bit down on how we've started, but I do think, I'm hoping that we will start to turn it around. I do back Ange to turn it around, and I think he will last the season. Yeah, I really hope both of you are right, because we all know the way Daniel Levy likes to operate, and he likes to panic when he thinks top 4 is no longer achievable. That's the worry I have. And if we go through these next 10 games now and the form, we win here, we win there, and we don't get consistent results, and we're still sitting around mid-table come November time, I've got a big fear that Daniel Levy will wield the axe of his, and it's not something that any of us want to see, but it's something that we have seen many times over the past with all the managers that have come through this football club. Like, bloody hell, he sacked the manager at half time once, for God's sake. So I don't put anything past him. What do you think, Dave?
I think it relies on the European run, and the reason why I say that is under Pochettino, our league that year was absolutely shit. I think from November onwards, we were absolutely crap. Passed over it. So I think, come the Euro owning games there, and it looks like we can go deep. I think that ultimately will keep him in the job. But I also think this Coventry game is huge for him. I think in terms of one game the fans will not tolerate is going out the League Cup. That's where the pressure really started coming on Ange so early last season, was going out of the League Cup off the back of a North London derby defeat at home, where we were weak, spineless, and showed absolutely no passion. That the fans will not tolerate them games. And where I actually think Ange would actually really help himself heading into this Coventry game, fresh up into this squad, because if you take yourself back to pre-season, a lot of the games in the first half, we started our first 11, it was stale, lacked a bit of ideas, but it was actually the youngsters when they were coming on that were bringing that freshness to it, that were bringing that bit of creativity, bringing the goals to the pre-season games and stuff like that. So for me, I think this Coventry
game is massive, I think is what he's trying to say.
Create some, well, I'm out again. I might go on.
Big up, Dave. Big up.
Have we got more games, the European games in this format? Because the group stage used to be 6 games.
Yeah, we've got 2 more games. We've got 4 games home, 4 games away.
So that's a little bit of an addition in kind of game time. And Dave, you're absolutely right about the League Cup, because the League Cup is a competition that can buy you time. Because obviously, you can quite quickly be in a kind of quarterfinal, semi-final kind of position, and suddenly you can nudge yourself from November to February, if you know what I mean, in respect of being in the League Cup. So I think that's quite an important competition. And also, the format of the Europa League now is such that it would be absolutely cataclysmic to go out. I mean, the way that it's formatted now, actually doesn't deserve to keep his job if we go out of that, the way that it's formatted, which means that that's already going to take him into the next phase, which is, I don't know when that starts, February or March. So I think the Europe thing will buy him the time.
I really hope all of you are right, guys.
I was just going to say as well.
Oh, go on.
I was just going to say as well. Look, let's be brutally honest. As Spurs fans, do we really give a shit about the league anymore? We know it's false dawns. As long as we finish in the top half, what we really want is a trophy in the cabinet. And I think that's where my eggs are in this season: League Cup, FA Cup, Europa League. That's where I really want to be concentrated. League, we'll finish top half. We'll either finish inside Europe or not. But if you go and win the Europa League, you go into the Champions League. So I don't really give a shit about the league, and to be honest with you, this year, and that's why I say I don't think Ange will live or die by the league results. I think he'll live or die by the cup results.
But yeah, he has to do well in the league to stay in a job for the cup. If you know what I mean. If we're bottom half, if we're bottom half come March, he won't be able to see a final.
We won't be bottom half.
I'm just saying, give an example. He has to keep up some sort of standards in the league, otherwise he won't be able to see the job through.
Yeah, to a degree. I think, I'm not saying he's going to lose every game, but I think it'll be win one, draw one, something like that. But most of the focus will be on the cup games this year, I feel.
Ange has actually been speaking his presser right now. Bissouma ruled out for midweek, but hopefully will be back for the weekend, he's saying. And I guess this is a good segue to our next segment.
Let me just get through these super chats, and then have you guys got time for another segment? We'll try and make it a bit shorter than the other ones.
Yeah, sure. We can't see the super chats ourselves, right? They're just.
I'll read them out.
Don't worry.
Victor Mathiasen says, ask these questions again in a year. Give him time to stop putting fuel to the fire. Klopp, Arteta, Pep all needed time. Let the team grow and gel. And I feel like that's the sentiment that we have been in agreement with so far. Charles says, Man U stuck with Oli, never worked. Arsenal stuck with Wenger when he was declining, never worked. If Ange don't adapt, no need to waste time. #adapt. I guess he does need to adapt to a certain extent, but I think you can't really compare Oli and the back end of the Arsene Wenger tenure, can you?
No. No.
And Thomas Owen says, Arteta and Klopp both took 7 transfer windows to become title challengers. Ange has had 3. And yeah, I do agree, but I do feel like some of the players that Ange has brought in, particularly in the front line, I'm not sure if they are good enough, particularly players like Brennan Johnson. And if we're looking to do something right now, I like Odegaard, but is he ready to come in and make a difference right here, right now? I still question that. All right, shall we go on?
Yeah.
Go on, Max.
I was going to say, I don't think this is part of the players that we've bought and the Ange situation. Is that I don't think he quite knows yet how to get the best out of them. Odegaard is a perfect example because he's played on the left and on the right. Yeah. Now I don't know if he's which one he's better. I hadn't seen enough of him. Maybe he is one that can play both sides. But then if you look at we go back to Johnson. Johnson has also played on the left and on the right, and he's an absolutely diabolical on the left. Diabolical, has not had nothing to offer. I feel Brennan's only good when he comes off the bench. Yeah, well, he had a good. Because you know why? Because sometimes we need something, or we're countering, and he's not bad on the countering. He's got the space, as I said, the green grass from the halfway line. His problem is when he's faced up with a fullback one-on-one, and this is where Kulusevski can always do something. Odegaard can also do something. Werner, life's like a box of chocolates, right? You never know what you're going to get, right? What that he ain't going to hit the target at the end of it, right? But can do certain stuff. But I feel like Ange is not quite sure. He's not quite sure sometimes. Do I move Son in the middle if I need to change the striker, or do I put? It'd be interesting to see Maddison playing left-sided actually. And maybe having someone else, which he did do at times. Maybe.
But that's the thing, Max. If we did have the required quality in the front line, he would know what to do with it. because we don't, he's always mixing and matching, trying to find the perfect kind of combination. It's because we don't have the required quality in that front line.
Well, do you know one thing that is ironic? I was dead against us playing three at the back when we had to, Conte and Mourinho and how we did it for lots of reasons, including the fact that we just didn't have the players to do it. I've always believed that three centre-backs...
Now we do.
No, and that's the irony, right? Because three centre-backs to play together need to be so tight in everything that they do. Because the big question that you get asked in one of three centre-backs is, do I go or do I not go? Like if you need to cover on the wide and cover the fullback. If I'm going, do you remember Sanchez used to point round? They used to point at each other. It's too late by then, right? And we just didn't have the players to carry. But actually, we kind of do. And we kind of do have fullbacks that would probably have to stay wide because when you're doing that, they're wing backs. Maybe there's something there. I'm scared to try it. I'll try it in a friendly.
I feel like we've got a perfect Conte team right now. I really do. I feel like we've got like a perfect team for Antonio Conte.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, you may well be right. But
I don't think we could switch to three at the back. We don't have the strength in depth. We've only got three centre-backs.
I get that point, but from a starting lineup point of view,
better three at the back though, isn't he?
What's that?
Ben Davies is better when he plays three at the back.
Much better. Yeah. That's true.
A bit of lack of pace, but never did. But
don't mention Ben Davies when Dave is around.
When you say strength and depth, this is really actually something that I did look at in the last couple of weeks. Let me tell you something about our friends down the road. They have a good side, and they're not perfect, but they've got a pretty good side. They have no bench, zero, no backup. Like they have a backup, the Trossard, Martinelli, a little bit on that side.
I don't know about that. You say that you got Calafiori, who's a top quality player on the bench.
We'll see about Calafiori. Centre backs, no, sorry, if they don't have Saliba and Gabriel.
But they got Ben White who can go in there. They got Calafiori that can go in there. They've got Timber that can potentially go in there as well. They do have strength in depth.
Not honestly, not that much of it. Same thing in midfield. Same thing if they lost like Saka or whatever they have, but not when you look at two benches, and you look at like in the squad, our second choices, first choices, not that far away from each other. Theirs is a huge drop, right? Man City doesn't have any drop; they have a huge drop. So I don't think we're struggling with depth. I think we're just struggling with polishing it. And
I don't know about that. I don't know about Jorginho and someone like Thomas Partey, and you do. Yeah, they have good strength in depth, and I think when they turn around to their sort of backup brigade, I think they're better quality than what we've got. To be brutally honest, they're more experienced. They can rely on them. Whereas ours, we're bringing in a lot of inexperience. We're bringing in a lot of youth, and that's I think a massive difference. We can sit here and maybe suggest a three at the back for Conte, but the reality is, if you play Dragons and Romero Van de Ven, you get an injury. Who's going to come in instead?
Ben Davies.
Nobody. So you automatically have to. Forget about him. He's liability at Tottenham Hotspur. But okay. And then if he goes as well, if there's a suspension or whatever, you're straight away back to a back four, and then you're chopping and changing most weeks. It's just not doable.
Most teams are like that. Most teams are like that.
Where they chop and change between a back four and a back five?
No. They just fray at the edges. They fray at the edges when they make some changes. There's often a big disparity in between their qualities. I actually don't think we're, I don't think we're that far off.
When we make a back, if we were to go to a back three.
Yeah, you have an injury. You don't have to play like that every week. You can play with a back three, get an injury, and go back to a back two, right?
That's not sustainable, though. Barely any manager in the Premier League does that. What manager across world football changes from a back four to a back three, depending on the option?
They're all slaves to philosophy.
City have started the season with a back three, haven't they?
That's true. Regardless of strength in depth and everything like that, I take the point where the first 11 that we could put out is a very good 11 with a back three. I think that's the point that we are trying to make.
We make this mistake though. It's more than an 11. It's a squad game. You need a
squad.
Yeah,
I get that. I completely understand that. I completely understand that, and I agree with that.